responsible company in this country that would try to start a business by making projections 30 years out and beyond with not knowing much about the community. I think it's my opinion, it's like you said, you can go out and find your own research to agree with your opinion, not to find the same degree for that. It's just not known, we don't know.
I'd just like to sit down and say, what are the assumptions that we use under a reversionary lease, and what are the assumptions under non-reversionary? And write the numbers down, and see how they turn out. That's a good question.
Yeah, let's not get to that point.
I just want to reply to a few things that Mr. Bradshaw had said with regards to the characterization of what was presented. It was not the intent, and nor did I hear anyone say that this information has been rammed down your throats for 8 years. This is something that has been an issue for 8 years and has been under discussion for 8 years. And furthermore, I don't believe, and even when looking there, I don't believe we ever said that you would be increasing the taxes on the citizens. We're saying that these are the options, and necessarily because of those options, those are the consequences, right? So those are things to consider. I'm not at all suggesting that you are. I don't know what your vote is. All I'm saying is that those are the options that I think that are important to consider. I'm not trying to characterize that you are necessarily falling one way or another on that issue. However, I think that the alternatives are clear and speak for themselves. Thank you.
One last thing, just please. It wasn't our idea. It was a quote by Mr.
You told me that 3 or 4 times.
Okay,
I got it.
sure.
I got it. I understand.
Let's go to the council permit for your comments.
Thank you. Mark, how much has the city paid out of the general fund, let's say over the last 10 years, towards the airport, for the FAA matching grants and so forth?
Well, I'm guessing it's probably $1.5 million. I know last year we transferred $225,000 in anticipation of making that match for the runway reality.
See, this goes to the heart of your strong argument on this indirect tax shift. I'm looking at it as objectively as I can, but to me, the tax shift has already happened, that the citizens of Heber City are subsidizing the airport, because of these matching grants, etc. Now, to me, I want a win-win, just like Mr. Hancock does, but I have to take that into the equation, that the airport's not paying for itself. So something's got to be resolved with current leases, future leases, whatever it is, so that the general fund is not subsidizing that airport. You see, I think the indirect tax shift is already happening. And this, whether that happens or not in the future, the citizens are already subsidizing the airport, right? So that's my concern. Where can we find a balance where the airport can be self-sustaining? Whatever these leases are going to be, that's to me is the long-term goal.
Yeah, and I think that's valid. But if there's non-reversionary leases, that burden will continue to increase.
I understand your point, but I'm already looking at the past tax shifts, right? As well as those that are coming due with the rehab and so forth.
And I think hopefully it's understood that with the non-reversionary leases, you have available to increase revenues through those leases.
Right, and see, that's a study I want, Mark, because I want to look at county assessors' depreciation, taxation schedule for the reversionary versus the non-reversionary. Because we want to see if that depreciation is happening from the county assessor's view.
I can send it to you.
That's what I want to see.
That's early analysis.
Yeah, just one on how I appreciate the question, because that's one of the number one task of the board was how can we keep ourselves self-sufficient and not a burden to the general taxpayer. And this is the recommendation that came back. And we feel that those growth doesn't happen, it's not costing the city. The city does, it just all it's the burdens on the private developer to bring the asset, and the city gets the return from the land lease. And trying to give the recommendation with a lot of work. And Brandon, if you need more time to think about it, that's what's necessary. We're pretty strong on this because we've been through it and we feel strong about it.
Could I add one more piece of, draw my attention, one more piece of documentation that we talked about at the last presentation? Mr. Brad Kitchen is the supervisor of operations at St. George Airport. And as you know, they built a new airport about 3 years ago in the old Hillside Airport. And they invited all their hangar owners over to the new airport, except the old airport had non-reversionary leases, and the new one had all reversionary. And if you have time, it's in your packet, the meeting materials tonight. Very few people decided to come over there. And this went on for over a year, and they couldn't talk people no matter what deal they gave them, because they wouldn't accept the reversionary leases. So they didn't just go back and change a couple. They changed all and made them all non-reversionary. And when they did that, it went from about 35 or 40% up to almost 100% of the people came over from the old. I also gave another example from Mrs. Marita Harold at Billings Logan Airport. And they were starting to take, about 4 years ago, they were starting to take the first reversionary hangars back. And they were in such bad shape and there was such an outcry that they finally went back and they changed everything to a non-reversionary as well. And one last one, and it's one of note because we talked about Grand Junction off and on. I think most of you are probably familiar with the problems over there. But they had a brand new lease in February of last year. It was a reversionary lease, but it was a 45-year lease, I think, 45 or 50-year lease, but it was a reversionary. And they offered it to everybody at the airport that already had its existing lease, so they just replaced it, but use the same starting date to begin with. Well, they're in the middle of negotiations now to the extent they can with the FBI investigation that's going on. But they're holding talks right now to address that. And it looks like, and both sides have not committed completely, but there's negotiations on to go back to reversionary leases. So there's another airport. But there are, airports are more and more starting to do non-reversionary hangars, even though, I can go up Big 20 one way, Mark Ross taking the other way. It's just like you said, you know, you can argue this for years on. But I think in the end, you're going to have to do what's right for the people.